Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am the Omni viewer, and don't worry, I'm not going back on my word. I'm not going to continue talking about Shin Godzilla per se. I'm instead going to talk about something tangentially connected to it. This video you see is a follow-up to Godzilla Showdown Legendary vs. Shin, in which, by way of comparison, I explain why I prefer Godzilla 2014 over Shin Godzilla. Now that it's done, there's another question that must be addressed. Was this comparison even a good one to make in the first place? It's come up in the comments section of that video several times, and it's something I've often wondered myself anyway. In a logical world, Godzilla 2014 and Shin Godzilla wouldn't be compared because they are very different films. One is a politically charged horror film, the other is a disaster film with heavy doses of human drama. And indeed, I made an entire video about how I wouldn't compare Kong Skull Island to Godzilla 2014 specifically because of how different it was looking to be. There are even those who have gone so far as to say that the only thing the two films have in common is the fact that Godzilla is in them. Although that's not entirely true. Yes, it's the obvious thing, but there are a few other similarities. There's the very serious tone. There are the hints of Lovecraftian elements, although Godzilla 2014 admittedly is more in the August Derleth side of things. There's the heavy focus on human characters and how we specifically follow a male protagonist who works for the government, albeit in different capacities. And of course, there's the fact that both movies are full reboots. But even then, that's not really enough to justify a full comparison because of how different they are in terms of genre, as I've already mentioned. It's a bit like comparing Batman to the Punisher. They're similar, but only in very superficial ways. And therefore a comparison wouldn't be entirely fair because you're inevitably going to find there are more differences than similarities. So again, the question comes up, should Shin Godzilla and Godzilla 2014 be compared to each other at all? Normally, I would have said no. Like I said, I already made that distinction for 2014 and Kong Skull Island. But here's the thing. I honestly believe that a comparison between these two films was unavoidable. You might even say it was inevitable. Think of it this way. We have two Godzilla movies released relatively close to each other. Both of them are brand new, but both of them are also very different. One of them was an American production with a fairly new director, which had the uphill task of somehow doing better than the last American Godzilla movie. And on the other hand, you had a Japanese production from the original studio with a pair of industry legends behind it. Both of them take very different approaches. However, both of those different approaches draw heavily from past versions of the series while still adding new elements. As a result, both versions have the same potential to be the defining version of Godzilla for a new generation. But then here come the longtime fans, myself included. We've already formed our opinions on the stuff that's come beforehand, and suddenly, here's something brand new. Naturally, we're going to get really excited and really want to talk about this stuff. And because there are so many of us, opinions are going to vary widely. Now suppose you find yourself talking to a fellow fan about these movies, and he has the exact opposite stance that you do. No, I'm not going to specify which one it is. Whichever one you think is better, he thinks the opposite. Well, you're going to want to know why, won't you? And if the other guy starts giving reasons that appear to miss the point, or are just flat out lies, or which are kind of disparaging to the character of anyone who disagrees with him, you're gonna want to set him straight, aren't you? Thence we have a debate. And the more passionate people are about which one is better, the more stubborn they're going to be about it, and so the debate turns ugly. And the next thing you know, the main talking point isn't about the quality of the movies, it's about the quality of the people who like those movies. The main point is suddenly, you aren't a true fan because you like that Godzilla movie. That means you don't understand Godzilla. Not like me, I like this movie, and I do understand Godzilla. I am a truer fan than you. And in a weird way, this brings my journey back full circle to the very first time I ever made a video discussing Shin Godzilla. That would of course be the myth of the definitive Godzilla. Follow the links if you haven't seen that yet. In that video, I addressed statements made by people who didn't like the leaked photos of Shin Godzilla's design, stating that they weren't Godzilla. Yes, this was an issue even before anyone had seen a single frame of film. And even though I'm not a fan of this movie, I stand by what I said back then. There's no such thing as a definitive Godzilla. Shin remains my least favorite, and despite a lapse in my initial review, which I since redacted, I will still say he counts as a version of Godzilla all the same. And thus, the argument of, you're not a true fan if you prefer this movie over that movie, is rendered completely invalid, at least to me it is. After all, what is Godzilla to you? Everyone has their own idea of it. Some stick exclusively with the original 1954 version. Some prefer the campy superhero of the 70s. Others are devoted to the Heisei series. They are all Godzilla. There are many different facets to Godzilla's personality which have been emphasized over the years. Shin Godzilla and Godzilla 2014 emphasize different aspects, but they are still both valid interpretations of Godzilla no matter how you slice it. Ergo, saying that one or the other somehow is a greater validation of one's fandom is nonsensical. You cannot base your entire understanding of this whole series on just one movie. You can't even base it on 10 movies. Your understanding of it needs to be all-encompassing. Though the core elements of Godzilla have remained intact over the years, the fact is this: Godzilla is whatever society needs him to be at the time. When society needs him to be an opponent, he is an opponent. When society needs him to be the champion, he is the champion. Obviously, not every version is going to appeal to everyone. But there's nothing wrong with that. The same can be said for every long-running character from Sherlock Holmes to Superman to James Bond. So this is ultimately the real reason why this debate has gotten as ugly as it has. It's not that one movie is inherently better than the other. It's that people have been using it to boost their own egos and tear others down. Like I said, a comparison between these two movies was always going to happen. Debates sparked by those comparisons were an inevitability. The ugliness, though, that was avoidable. That was something that honestly never should have happened. And that is why I've approached this whole topic the way I have. This is a debate about a subjective topic. Neither side is ever going to win. We can only really speak for ourselves as individuals. I certainly won't discourage debate or discussion about this topic, so long as it remains civil. And that was why I went forward with the comparison anyway, and did it the way I did. My video is not meant to be a definitive answer to the question of which movie is better. It's meant to be an example of how anyone, regardless of which side they fall on, should approach the topic. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer, signing off.